How's it going, everyone? I hope you guys are all enjoying your holidays, as today we're going to take a look at our next potential Arctic blast and snowstorm threats we could see throughout the eastern half of the United States, because that possibility could arise by the time we approach the first week of January. So let's first take a look at the GFS model. So if we were to take a look right around the 270-hour mark as of January 7th, 2025, and go even beyond that point, we do see the GFS model pretty much taking a worse case scenario when it comes to a significant winter storm for the Northeast, which brings snowfall as far south as Mississippi, and even further southward than that, we see snowfall as far south as Texas and Louisiana, and this extends all the way north to the Northeast, where it really peaks out in intensity by the time it approaches the Northeast, bringing heavy snowfall right up along the Northeast coast and into Massachusetts as well, Connecticut, New England. So we do see a very significant winter storm in our hands, but this is very far out in the future. Let's go further back into a more manageable time scale when it comes to forecasting what's going to happen in the near future. So let's first start right at the beginning where we're at right now, right around almost at December 27th at the time of recording this video. So we're going to see that temperatures should warm up for much of the eastern United States. So for many areas of the Northeast, including my area in northern New Jersey, this was the first time we've seen White Christmas since 2009. So it's been quite a while. However, if you're hoping for that to last, the snowfall on the surface, it's unfortunately unlikely to, because we're going to see those temperatures rise up, and we're going to see a big ridge pretty much enhance the southerly flow to bring rainfall to the eastern United States. But it does get interesting by the time we approach a new year, because we're going to see this first trough move through, and it's going to bring a significant Arctic blast to the United States. Now, the first possibility of a significant winter storm impacting the Northeast might be the one that could maybe develop right around the January 2nd to January 3rd timeframe. At this point, it's looking a little bit less likely, but the interesting feature that the GFS model is showing in this scenario is that it does expect a decent amount of instability to exist in the southeast, and as a result of that, we do see precipitation develop primarily due to the instability associated with this jet stream dip. And if we were to see scenario where the ridging could be a little bit stronger to force a more southerly flow, to create more of a warm southerly flow to interact with this very cold air mass just to the north of it, then I would say the possibility of a snowstorm would definitely increase when it comes to this small feature right here, where we do see a small low pressure system located right up along this jet stream boundary, but there just isn't enough instability for this storm system to necessarily go all the way and bring any sort of snowstorm to the Northeast. We're going to need to see a bit more ridging for this to not only have a bit more instability to where it could be a more powerful storm system, but also more ridging for this storm system to take a track a little bit further northward and closer to the coast. In this scenario, the ridging is too weak, which means that we don't see enough instability or enough of a strong southerly flow that would push the storm system right up along the coast. So there's still a lot of time to go when it comes to getting the exact details when it comes to this low pressure system, because we're talking about forecasts at 7 to 8 days out, a lot of time to go. But the European model also isn't agreeing with the possibility that there's going to be a snowstorm right around this time period. And the reason why is because the European model expects even less instability associated with that trough. Let's go to the 12Z run, and you're going to clearly see that while there is still a decent amount of a jet stream dip right over the eastern United States, the thing is that it doesn't dip as far south as what the GFS model is forecasting, and there's even less ridging that would allow for a stronger southerly flow to enhance the instability. So the chance is even lower for a snowstorm right around the January 2nd to January 3rd timeframe in the European model scenario. However, it's still a feature I want to keep an eye on, and I'll certainly keep you guys updated if we do see any significant changes when it comes to this exact forecast right around those 2 days, because I think it's at least something to keep an eye on depending on how much ridging builds just to the east of the United States. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days. However, that isn't our only snowstorm possibility that could happen in the first week of January, because like I said, we're likely, the thing I could say with almost high certainty at this point, or I should say, what I could say with high certainty at this point, is that we will see a significant Arctic blast build over the eastern United States right over during the first week of January, and that of course enhances the possibility of a snowstorm pattern developing. So in this scenario, we do see that we still do see snowfall right over the lake of those right up along the Great Lakes. So that's something to be aware of if you're right up along the shore of the Great Lakes. As I'll certainly keep it you guys updated as well. It really all depends on the strength of this low pressure system as well as the position of this low pressure system, and if the winds will at all be strong enough to support for lake effect snow. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated as we get a bit more certainty with this forecast. But beyond that point, like I said, there are more possibilities of snowstorms that could impact an even larger area. So we have this second trough that's expected to move in right around the January 5th to the 6th time frame, and does bring a decent amount of snowfall over the northern Great Lakes, including the interior Northeast, and even in the areas further southward in the Northeast. You might need to keep an eye on this one, because we see the accumulating snowfall move as far south as southern New England. This includes Connecticut, Rhode Island, Boston, maybe New York City gets involved with this as well, and northern Pennsylvania. So we'll need to keep an eye on this as well, but the forecast hour is still very far out. But the thing that gives me a little bit more certainty with this forecast, even though it's a forecast that's 10 days out, is that the GFS model is almost taking a forecast that's right around the ballpark in the GFS model scenario. Of course, there are definitely differences. The storm system is a lot weaker in the GFS model scenario, but it's still taking relatively the same trajectory and bringing snowfall to a lot of the same areas. So this could mean that this exact trough might have a little bit more certainty when it comes to its forecast than you'd expect for a trough that we're trying to forecast that's around the 10 to 9 day mark. So there's at least something to keep in mind as well. But just so I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we get a bit more certainty with the forecast. It's just a little bit too early to say, but I could say with certainty that you should expect a major Arctic blast for the eastern United States. So definitely prepare for that, and the possibility of snowstorms associated with that Arctic blast. So, and beyond that point, this is when we almost get into the guessing range when it comes to forecasting a snowstorm. Like I said, this GFS model's forecast right around the January 9th to 10th time frame brings just a significant winter storm for not only the Northeast but the Southeast as well, as this would be very significant for a lot of these areas, especially in the areas where you're not necessarily used to significant snowstorms impacting you guys. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Way too early to say anything for certain when it comes to this snowstorm, but what's interesting is that the European model is also taking at least a relatively similar forecast. They aren't completely completely taking scenarios that are completely different from each other, which is very interesting. And if we see that trend continue, the certainty could rise that we will see a significant snowstorm for the Northeast, because it expects the same trough to bring quite a bit of cold air behind it, and it expects the same trough to become a similarly strength nor'easter as what the GFS model is forecasting, even though it definitely doesn't move as far south. In the European model scenario, the snowfall doesn't impact the Southeast at all. unlike the GFS model, but it still does bring a similar trajectory when it comes to how much cold air brings behind it, as well as exactly where the heaviest snowfall will be. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days once you get more certainty with this Arctic blast. And if we were to take a look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, we clearly see that temperatures are more likely to be below average for the week of January 3rd and January 9th, 2025, which certainly raises a possibility of a snowstorm pattern developing right around that week, which is why I say you're likely to experience much colder than average conditions during the first maybe 2 weeks of January. And taking a quick look at the Arctic oscillation, it also promotes the idea that we will be in for a strong polar vortex in the United States, where we do see the Arctic oscillation is expected to drop into the negatives, which is more likely, which means that we're more likely to see a weaker jet stream, which would allow the cold air to meander further southward without being diverted by the strong jet stream winds. So this could contribute to that higher possibility of a snowstorm for the first week of January as well. So the key thing that will make it potentially more or less likely you experience a major snowstorm in right around the eastern United States is the amount of ridging we see in the western United States. In the European model scenario, we see that the ridging is a lot stronger, and while it does still bring a significant winter storm to the northeast right around the January 8th time frame, it doesn't move as far south, which means that it has less instability to work with. It isn't as significant of a winter storm, and it doesn't move far south enough to impact the areas in the southeast. But if we were to take a look at the GFS model, it's a completely different story, where the GFS model is expecting a weaker amount of ridging. We clearly see difference right here. In the European model scenario, this trough is a lot further northward thanks to the stronger ridging. But in the GFS model scenario, it's a lot weaker, which means that we're more likely to see a much more significant jet stream dip with ridging a lot weaker in right around the western United States, and that enhances a possibility of a significant winter storm impacting pretty much the entirety of the eastern United States as we approach the January 10th time frame. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next several days once we get a bit more certainty with the forecast. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.